First of all, I'd like to apologise for wearing trousers. I know that you weren't in your video, Colin. Sorry about that. But I'm not an artist, so I feel like that gives me some excuse. While I was watching your video, I felt like it was a really great discussion that wasn't happening, and it was a travesty that I couldn't actually sit down and talk about this with you, or that you couldn't sit down with people at that exact moment and talk about it. So I made some notes on normal paper. I really love maths. And so now I'm making a video in the same vein, and now I'm pointing out that I'm making a video in the same vein, so it's artistic, or at least that's what I've gathered. And I thought I'd just go through the points you made about Damien Hirst and sort of give my thoughts on them and respond to them. So, firstly, the whole money thing, like, I'm a very die-hard anti-capitalist. I'm, some kind of socialist. I haven't figured it out yet. It's hard to know. It's a very difficult discussion to have when socialism hasn't really happened. But under the sort of very strict scientific Marxist lens that is very useful in theoretical discussions to use, because it's very logic based, it's very rationalist. He would fall under the category of technically proletariat in the sort of class binary, but more specifically, artists who sell their work are petty bourgeois, really, because they don't hire anyone, really. They're not specifically exploiting their labour, but they are also making money. They run sort of enterprise. Don't quote me on that. I still haven't finished Imperialism, something whatever, the book. About works being made by yourself, I think that, and again, I'm not an artist, I don't even know who Yves Klein is, but I think that it really, really doesn't matter who does the physical labour in your artistry. If I came up with an idea for art and I said, if I came up with the lettuce and the blocks, and the lettuce will crumble away and then the blocks will come together, fleetingness of youth, and I anonymously paid someone in Puerto Rico to put it together and put it in a gallery, it would still be my art, because art is, at its essence, two things. Okay, I'm really, really not going to start talking about what art is, but the point is, it would still sort of be my art, and it doesn't really matter who does the building blocks. For example, there's a Ralph Rugoff exhibition, I did my research, about arts which are completely invisible. There's a film that was filmed with no tape in the camera, there's invisible ink drawings, people like Andy Warhol and Yoko Ono have contributed to it. I believe there's like a plinth where Andy Warhol stood and then stopped standing, and it's like, that's something you're experiencing. And the truth is, Andy Warhol could have never stood there, and it wouldn't matter. It doesn't matter who stands there. It's still about the idea, which invokes emotions, and the idea sort of belongs to you because you came up with it. It's a bit like music. If I play Beethoven's Seventh Symphony, it's still Beethoven's art, even though I'm the one that's playing it. With regard to dead animals, I think that capturing and killing animals for use in art is no more or less moral than eating them as meat, because it is an excessive use of animals that only benefits our own fulfillment as people and not any necessary survival instinct. It's about mental replenishment and mental health rather than actual necessity. Now, I am a vegan for various reasons, and I think that the same thing applies. I it is not necessary to use animals in art when you could equally have a perfectly valid artistic reason to replace it with something that isn't an animal. And I think, wow, he's a bit of a dick for doing that, but he probably eats meat, so I think it is no more dangerous than that. And I generally don't hate people for eating meat. I think that there's a sort of cultural brainwashing, blah 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 blah. Point being, I generally agree with you that it's not a great reason to hate someone, but I don't agree with it morally. With his excellent contribution to the YBA movement and setting up galleries in, the 1800s or whenever, I think that that kind of doesn't matter, because art, as this huge cultural entity, has an inevitability to it. If Damien Hirst hadn't helped set up the YBA movement, surely 5 years later some other artist in London would have set up something similar, and so the world would be wouldn't be particularly worse off. I think saying, if Damien Hirst didn't exist, these things wouldn't have happened, is a silly line of reasoning, because we can't possibly fathom how much the world would change if we removed someone or changed something about it. For example, it could be butterfly effect in that Damien Hirst accidentally stopped the death of everyone on the planet by being some key integral in not causing World War III, or he could really, really not matter. And I think it's never a very useful thing to say, what if I hadn't done this, unless we're in some kind of deterministic universe, like if we're playing a card game and I say, oh, what if I had played this card instead? Then it's useful, because that card game is very small and deterministic. But in this giant chaotic system that we call the planet, I find it hard to care about the actions that people are taking. I find it hard to care about comparing their actions to the absence of those actions, if that makes any sense. You say we should hate him because he wants to be hated, or rather, we shouldn't feel bad or necessarily look for a reason to not hate him because he wants to be hated. And I think, now I haven't actually done any research on this, but you seem to say the YBA thrives off of controversy, and I don't think that's the same as being hated. I think that hate can be a tool for infamy, but controversy at its heart should be about making sure that people don't get into a philosophical rut where they're complacent with their own philosophies without ever questioning them. I pride myself on, continuing to question my own morals and my own standards. Like just earlier today, I was questioning my own argument for God, and I was saying, well, does it make any sense? And I'm starting to lean towards no, so I'm going to have to find an entirely different philosophy to base all of my decisions around. But I don't think that controversy, that being controversial, is necessarily wanting to be hated. Now, of course, maybe he does actually want to be hated, in which case I think that's just kind of edgy, and I feel very emotionally detached from anyone who is acting in that sort of edgy way. But I think that's also partly due to memes brainwashing me. There's a very strong culture among leftist circle memes where you just sort of don't care about edgy people. That's an entirely different discussion, which I think would be very interesting, but currently I'm talking to a camera and the camera can't talk back. Sad times. I think that him just having symbolisms for life and death and God and stuff and then selling it as art is an interesting discussion to have, because I personally wouldn't be able to do that immediately. I couldn't create shallow artwork and then get it into a gallery and say, well, this is about, the fleetingness of youth, and then sell it and then use that to make a living, because there is a certain culture of elitism in very high level art. And I think that Hearst probably had a very privileged position to be able to make that his livelihood. I think that, you know, passion should be prerequisite for art galleries and very high level art, but I don't care enough about art in general to really comment on that elitism. I just think it should be something that perhaps you, the reader, think about. Reader? Viewer. And that's all of the points I have on my paper. I hope you're doing well, Colin, and I hope this video finds you.